Good morning, Dan. Welcome to another session for today. Again, I was speaking with your supervisor, and they say they would like you to start working as a permit holder to do some activities that they have for you. Again, they are pleased with your development, and they just want you to keep developing and getting more responsibilities at work, so you can continue developing in your professional growth and career, right? So today we're looking at working under an issued permit, right? In the workplace here, but different activities that require permits, permit to work systems to be established. And so today we'll just cover why a permit is required, what kind of permits we work under. We have a few examples of hot work permits, which is what you'll be doing mostly after this session. And throughout the session, if you have anything to ask, just let me know. And then any questions you have, just bring them up and I'll make sure I answer them as well as I can. And just to make sure you're confident leaving this room to take the responsibilities of a permit holder on here. So before we start, I'll just sign on the attendance sheet here. And I also go through a bit of housekeeping. So if you need something to drink or water, the kitchen is just outside of this main door, and just go down the corridor, you'll see the kitchen there, and you can get some water there. If you need to use the loo, just get out of this door and turn left and keep walking, and you'll see the loo at the end of the corridor. Please put your phone on silent so it doesn't disrupt us. If you need to make a call, let me know, and you can step out of the room and make your call there. I'll just run through some emergency evacuation processes. On the screen here, I've got our emergency evacuation procedure. So if an emergency situation arises, such as a bushfire or a gas leak or anything that requires to evacuate the premises, we'll follow this emergency procedure here. So what happens is an alarm will go off. When you hear the alarm go off, just stay calm and alert and wait for further instructions from me. What we'll do is we'll head to the nearest exit, our exit here, and then calmly and orderly move to the master point area. We'll stay at the master point area and have our names ticked off, the roll call. And once that's done, we'll just wait for further instructions. They might say you can go back to work, or they might say that we need to wait a bit more until the workplace is made safe. But otherwise, just stay still calm and follow directions from myself or the fire warden, and then everything will be okay. Any questions on that?
No.
All good? All right, perfect. So again, this session here is to help us to be able to work under a permit, right? To know our requirements for that. So today I'll just run through the whys, the hows, what we sign on to, and also review a permit form, and also go list by list and see and identify what information we need to put in that form there. But before we start, what I will do is I will show you this video here regarding permit to work and things to look out for when working under a permit. So this one here will touch on hot work permits and why we need hot work permits, and the risks to identify and control during hot work activities, which I think will be very much more relevant to what you'll be doing. So just watch this video with me.
Welcome to Custom Animation's presentation on hot work. Hot work is any activity or process that generates heat or sparks, such as grinding, welding, cutting, or heating. All these activities require a hot work permit. A hot work permit is a process to ensure these activities don't result in injuries, fires, or explosions. This starts by ensuring you are authorized and qualified to complete this task. To conduct hot work, personnel must be adequately trained and deemed competent in hot work permit procedures. Before starting, complete any permit documentation process and make the appropriate arrangements with site management. Determine the type of fire extinguisher most suitable. This must be on hand within 15 meters of the hot work. However, this doesn't include any fixed facility equipment. If the hot work is to be conducted over grid mesh flooring or grades, we must ensure any hot debris is caught using mats or boards. If hot work is in the vicinity of drains, cable racks, electrical cables, and other heat-sensitive equipment, we must cover these using fireproof material. If working outdoors and water is available, we must wet down any immovable combustible materials, such as long grass. If hot work is within 1 meter of insulated sandwich panels, you should relocate your work or cover it with a thermal barrier. Ensure there is clearance of at least 4 meters around and above hot work. Ensure the worksite is isolated from traffic and pedestrian movement. Complete a task risk assessment and hot work permit and ask yourself the following. If the hot work is done on or adjacent to plant equipment and utilities, do services, pipes and pressure vessels need to be isolated? Does the work area require specific clearing, preparation, ventilation, or atmospheric monitoring? Does the nature of the work require respiratory protection? Does the work involve arc welding requiring electrical and radiation controls? Then ensure the hot work permit is checked over and authorized. Conduct a visual inspection of the location where hot work is to be done. Where possible, all combustible materials shall be cleared from within a 15-meter radius of the hot work. The area is to be controlled by the authorized personnel, as named on the hot work permit. Identify any hazards that are not listed and implement further controls as required. Continue monitoring the environment and act in accordance with the established controls. Once the hot work is complete, maintain a fire watch for at least 30 minutes. Prior to closing off the hot work permit, the authorized person shall inspect the work area with other competent personnel to ensure the work area has been left in a safe condition. Remember, if you ever have any questions or concerns, be sure to ask your supervisor.
Nice. Any questions regarding that video?
About hot work things, what kind of activities are associated with them?
Okay, yes. So pretty much it's activities that generate heat, sparks, or like hot slag. So things such as grinding, welding, oxycutting, or even doing anything that produces any heat radiation that could cause something to catch on fire or even burn you or other people. Those are things that are classified as hot works. And again, the things that you'll be doing after this course, like if you're grinding a pipe or cutting a pipe or things like, or even welding something, you'll be deemed to be undertaking hot work, right? And as you saw from that video there, they carry around a lot of risks, right? You heard that lady saying there that after you're doing your hot work, you have to wait for 30 minutes prior to leaving the area. Do you know why that is?
To make sure that things are stable and safe.
Yes, exactly right. So otherwise things might catch on fire, right? If we leave the area, usually when you cut something, even though there might not be a flame on it, if it's hot, it can cause another thing to be hot, and then that will start a fire, right? So in our company, you know, we have quite a few permits in place. We've got confined space entry permits for if you're working in a confined space. We're working at heights permits. If you're working at heights where you need to be harnessed up, you need a permit for that. We've got hot work permits, which we covered in that video, and we should be covering today. We've got other things such as excavation permits, grid mesh permits, isolation permits, and main cage permits, right? It's just a general knowledge of other permits that we have on site. But for today, we would use an example of a hot work permit, right? So if you want a hot work permit, what you do, let's say your supervisor is giving you a task and say, hey Dan, I need you to go cut a bracket, a metal bracket of a steel structure, right? And what you do is say, oh, I've been assigned to do this by my supervisor, and you know that, oh, the company requires you to have a permit for any hot works. You go to the permit office and say, hey, can I please have a hot work permit form? What they will do is they'll give you a form for you to fill out and to identify the requirements, to also know the requirements that you need to fulfill prior to having this permit. Later in the session, we'll go through this permit together and we can identify what information you need to put in each section. Right. So when you go to the get a permit, the permit issuer will review your activity and review what controls you're planning to put in place. They look at your risk assessments, your JHAs and streams, to make sure you've got all the right controls in place before you start work. They'll ask you about what your scope of your work is. You get a cutting a bracket of a steel pipe. They ask you about the location, so they know that it's safe there. They also ask you about the time. So they want to know like where you're working, how you're working, and what time you're working at, to know who's around you, to know what's around you, so they can make sure that the correct controls are put in place before you continue. So all the sections of the permit are completed. And then if they're happy with what you put in the controls you have in place, they'll sign off on the permit and get you to sign. Then you can take it to the work area and have other people that you're working with also sign onto the permit. And anyone who has not signed onto the permit cannot be doing any of the work. They just have to all work to the requirements of the permit. And the only way to confirm that they've read the requirements is when they sign on there as well, sign onto the permit. Again, so your responsibilities are, so you've been given the permit by the permit issuer. They're happy with what you've done. They're responsible for making sure that anything that you agree to here, you stick to it. So if you agree to having extinguishers, to having fire blankets, to having an exclusion around your area, you have to stick to it, right? And anyone who is working in your area has to sign on this. So it's either you're in charge of the permit. So if they give you another person to work with, you have to say, hey, read and sign on to the permit. Make sure you understand our requirements of what we're doing, and then sign on to that before we start working. And then you also monitor the works throughout the progress, right? You monitor for anything that might go wrong, anything that might change. Make sure people are doing the right thing, they're using the right equipment and the right things and all that. And if they're not doing that, you can just stop for a second. Let's fix up before we continue, right? And then you just keep reviewing your permit, making sure that whoever is working also has signed on, as we touched on already. And sometimes there might be things that can arise, right? Like changes. Let's say a change happens in your work area, right? So what changes could occur, do you think? What changes could occur in your
maybe like weather could change.
The weather could change, right? Yeah, it might get windier, right? What's the issue with having heavy winds or you're doing hot work?
The heat transfer, like the wind will move the heat around.
Yeah, right. And end up setting something else on fire, right?
Yeah.
Or setting someone else on fire. So things like that could change, right? And even sometimes there might be another crew or another work team that comes in your area, and then you're now have more risk of hurting people, or maybe another operation comes in, like a mobile plant or things like that. That could be a change, right? So when a change happens, what you do is you take your permit to your issuer and let them know of the change. And if you've made any additional controls, let them know of the additional controls. And if they're happy, they'll continue to have you use the permit. If the changes are too dangerous or cause more severe risk, what they'll do is that they will withdraw the permit, allow for controls to be put in place before they reissue the permit, right? And sometimes if you are doing a work and you don't finish the task for the day, what will happen is you will need to talk to the permit issuer to extend your permit, right? Because sometimes inconveniences can happen, things will become harder than they need to be, and you will need to again get it reviewed by the permit issuer. And sometimes if an emergency situation arises, so let's say there's a fire or a gas leak and you need to evacuate, all the permits will be withdrawn, and then the areas will be made safe. People will read it. The supervisors and managers will make sure that there is no other risk that could cause things to blow up or people to burn or things like that. And then once everything is controlled, they will reissue the permit, and then you can continue doing your work. And sometimes maybe you might change shift, you might go to a different shift, or you might need to go to a different area. There are other things in the permit you can sign on to transfer the permit to someone else, or to even extend the permit, right? Another thing is another thing that will call for change is if the job changes. So you've been asked to go cut a bracket, right? And then I need to cut the whole steel frame because it's all falling apart, right? That's a change of scope. So what you do, you take your permit back to the issuer and say, hey, this has changed. I've made these controls and these additional items are put in place. And if they're happy, they will sign your permit off, and you can continue. But if a change occurs, don't just continue with the work. Stop, get everything in place, get the permit issuer to review the permit and approve it again. And then that way you can make sure that everything is correct and in safe working order. And as I said earlier, if an emergency situation arises, all permits cease, and then the emergency is responded to, and once everything is completed, then they'll issue out other permits, right? And duration of permits. So for hot work permits, the duration of these is just for the duration of your task. So you've been asked to cut a bracket of a metal frame. After you cut the bracket off, your permit has finished and must be closed out, right? But let's say you're doing a bigger task that takes more time or takes the whole day. After the end of the shift, your permit will automatically be finished. If you need to extend the permit, go to the permit issuer and say, I was doing an activity yesterday, I didn't finish it, or the day before, I didn't finish it, I'll come to finish it tomorrow, and then they'll make sure to put another permit ready for you for the next day. Any questions for me so far?
So how long maximum do you have to hold that permit for?
So maximum for automatic cancellation will be a shift, right? So you have a permit on for a shift, but that's without even having to talk to the permit issuer. But if your task increases or becomes more, or goes above a day, then you go and say to the permit issuer, my task is taking longer than the shift. Since I'm going home, I need my permit to be extended for tomorrow. Then they'll extend it as long as the area is kept safe and the controls are maintained. They'll keep extending it until the work is finished, right? And sometimes, let's say you have to do something else, right? You've been asked to go cut the bracket, and then they say, no, we don't need you here. Can you go do something else? What you would do is you can transfer the permit to someone else, right? Let's say one of your workmates comes in to finish cutting. There's a section here where you can sign off the permit to the new person, and the new person signs on to accept the permit. Now they're in charge of the area, they're in charge of the controls, and they're in charge of the people working under the permit. Same as you, if someone transfers over the permit to you, now you take over the area, you take over the requirements and the controls that are required, right? And then after you finish, you close the permit. So after all the work is done, there's a section here where you sign off on permit closeout. So you as a holder, you sign, you put your name and you sign and say, I've finished my work, and the permit issuer will look at it, make sure your work area is safe as well, and confirm with you that everything is all safe, and then they'll sign it off, and then your permit is now closed out. All permits must be closed out appropriately as our procedures, and filled out appropriately as well, right? So what we'll do now is I've got a blank permit for you here. We'll go down the permit list and work together to fill out some details and information, right? So we'll make an example as we go. So we can say, let's say with a location of the work, right? Maybe let's say factory. Let's say factory floor.
Do you
I did right. We can just kind of discuss it with the factory floor, right? And then you've got SWIMS and JHA, right? That's a risk assessment number for your activities. So say you've been asked to go cut the bracket on a steel frame on the factory floor, and the JHA for that, you just put the number on there and it links back to the permit, right? And then you put the date of when you're doing the work in there, make sure that's accurate, and the period valid from. So you let the permit issuer know that, this task is going to take me 2 hours or 4 hours or the whole shift, and they'll put the start time and the finish time. So when that time finishes there, you know that your work is finished. And if you need more time, then you go back to the permit issuer, and then they will make sure they give you more time. And equipment utilized, you choose what equipment you're using. So as this is for hot works, so with the angle grinder, got the welder, oxyacetylene or other. So you can choose whatever hot work equipment you're using there. So the permit issuer can know the risks that you might be exposed to, right? Then the next box below, it says activity details, scope of work. Like what work would you be doing that requires hot work permit?
Maybe like welding metal together.
Yeah, welding metal together, right? So you put in there welding metal together, right? And also you put the risk controls as identified in the hot work risk assessment, right? Which will be something that will be on your SWIMS. So you can say like, flashes or slag dropping, or burns to serve on other people, you put that on there here. And then you also go down this checklist here of making sure things are in place. You got your JHA in place, your risk assessment has been completed and is available with the work permit. That only persons suitable to do the task are the ones doing the tasks, and that any conflicting tasks in the area have been identified, and that any barricading that's required has also been put in place, right? So once you complete that, you go on to page 2, which is on the other side. So what you see here is an inspection checklist, right? That makes sure that you have all those things in place. So they ask you if you've removed all combustible material in place or anything that would catch fire, right? What kind of things can catch fire in the workplace?
Wood,
trees, yeah, clothes and all that. So you identify those things and say, yes, I've identified those things, and make sure that they're away from the area. Or even fuels, right, or chemicals, those can also catch fire. Put a drum of oil, a drum of diesel next to you, you move that out of the way so that it doesn't catch fire. And then you put any barriers or fly or screens to make sure that the slag or the flash doesn't hurt other people, right? And fire suppression, what like in a case that something catches on fire, what equipment can you get to make sure that things don't burn all the way down? Fire extinguishers, right? Yeah. Any other things that you can get a hose pipe with some water? Yeah. Or even fire blankets. So good options there. And as you saw in the video, there are other things that could change is weather conditions, right? So to make sure the wind is satisfactory, that the wind is not blowing too hard or too fast, that it might cause an issue. And also, again, you look at all those things, make sure that any equipment that releases energy or gas has been all looked down and closed. That you got the right PPE as well. What personal protective equipment do you think you might need for doing what work?
Safety gear for yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And maybe face gear.
Yeah, face gear as well, right? Maybe a welding mask or a face shield for grinding, and apron as well. If it's possible to fly towards you, and that's PPE that you may need to use, right? And so you just assess the area and so on. And after you've checked this here, what you will do is you will give this to the payment issuer, and then if they're happy with your controls, they will just sign at the bottom here saying payment issuer authorizer. So they'll sign at the bottom of page 1. They'll put their name, the date, and the time, and then they'll sign there. And then you also sign underneath the approval to say that your payment has been approved and you accept the requirements that the payment has. So once that's signed, right, you go back to page 3, and then you take that to your work area. You see that table at the bottom of the page there. Your workmates can sign there as saying that they've read and understood the requirements of the permit and are working in accordance with the permit, right? And so on. And you can see also, if you go back to page 2, let's say what happens if, let's say, you've been asked to work in an area, right? And let's say asked to weld together in the factory, and then your supervisor says, hey, I need you to go somewhere else and do another activity, but this guy will come and take over. What must you guys do then? Transfer the permit, right? And how do you transfer the permit?
There's a table down here that says transfer of permit.
So what details go on there?
The date, your name, signature, and the name and signature of the person that you're transferring
Taking over,
to.
right? Yeah. So if you're asked to move to a different area or do that, that's what you do. You fill this out, get them to sign, and also you sign. They sign as well, right? And then after you've done all your work, and you're happy that everything is safe, what do?
You close the permit.
Yes, exactly. And what details go on the permit close up?
Your name, the signature, and the authorizer's name and signature.
Perfect. No, that's it right there. So you gotta make sure that you have all those things. And in the area, let's say you finish doing your hot works, how many minutes do you wait for to just make sure that things don't catch on fire? 30 minutes, right? And that's important as well, right? So that, like, if you don't leave the area and then something else combusts and a fire starts. it's important to follow these processes for safekeeping, right? Any questions from you regarding the permit to work process?
On everything I have to do on construction, do I need a permit for it?
No, it'll be certain things, right? So for example, again, we said hot work activities, if you're working in a confined space, if you're working at heights, if you're removing grid mesh or isolating something, those activities will require a permit to work, but otherwise, other low risk activities don't require a permit to work. They just require a normal risk assessment. Yeah. Any other thing? No, all good. So we can hold on to that, right? We'll keep looking at it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. Any questions? Any other questions regarding the session?
So, for example, if we're gonna do the work with heights, for example, if we have a permit, is it gonna be exactly the same? Like,
yeah, it will just be different. Yes, it'll be similar. You have different controls for the checklist. So here it covers the hot work covers things about combustible equipment and other materials around you. Whereas looking at heights, we look at like, are you secured up there? Do you have a way of getting down if you get stuck? Do you have a spotter in place in case you hit something when you don't see? So it'll be the same structure, it will just have different risks associated with it. But it's the same process for applying for it, for transferring it, and for closing it out. So that stays the same. Yeah. Great question. Thank you for that. What I'll do is I will give you a feedback form to complete. You can complete that. That will be great. And then I'll let your supervisor know that you've completed this task and that now you can work as a permit holder. Do you feel confident about working under an issued permit?
Yeah, I feel confident. I know it's going to be a lot of paperwork, but I can get used to it.
Nah, good. That's what we like to hear. I think you'll be a very good permit holder. And I'll check in with you. I'll check in with you every day to see how you're going with applying for permits and looking under permits. And if you have any issues or concerns, don't hesitate to contact me, ask me, and I'll make sure that I help you wherever I can. So we'll meet after the daily preset meetings for now, and then later on we'll have less frequent meetings. And then once I know that you got everything under control and you understand the gist of everything, we can meet less frequently. But otherwise, I think you are good and are ready to be a permit holder. Thank you. Thank you so much. All the best. I'll pass your information to your supervisor and also the HR manager. She'll put your competency on your profile. All right. Thanks, Dan. Take care. Cheers.
Oh my, say G.
No, it was still recording.